Teachers in Oklahoma are striking for the fourth straight day. On Wednesday, teachers were seen juggling their car keys, asking Governor Mary Fallin, "Where's my car?" You see, Governor Fallin previously compared teachers in the state to teenagers wanting better cars. Teachers are demanding a $10,000 pay increase over 3 years and a $5,000 raise for support staff. For more on this battle, which seems to be going to state after state, we're joined tonight by John Nichols, Washington correspondent of The Nation. John, nice to have you back with us. Good to see you again.
Pleasure.
You have covered education issues for decades, and this is very familiar when you and I were shoulder to shoulder in Madison, Wisconsin, some, 7, 8 years ago, when the employees were being pushed aside by Governor Scott Walker. This is very similar in all these states, is it not?
It sure is, Ed. You know, in the United States, in the real peak era economically for a lot of states, that period in the 60s into the 70s, even into the early 80s, you really saw states competing to be the best in the country on education. And they saw paying teachers well as a part of that equation. Now, as time went on, some states maintained that commitment, but a lot of other states fell behind, and they basically balanced their budgets by, kind of keeping teacher pay low. You can do that in one cycle if the economy is tough, but if you do that year after year, decade after decade, as has happened in some of these states, West Virginia, Kentucky, Oklahoma, there comes a point where you've got teachers who are having to take second and third jobs just to survive, and no parent wants their kid's teacher to be having to work a night job as well as trying to educate their kid. It doesn't work. So that's what's happening here.
One common denominator in all of this, it always seems like when the Republicans are the dominant party at the state level, these cuts take place and the lack of funding is certainly paramount. For instance, in West Virginia, they have had a lady on the other night saying that they've raided their pension fund. That certainly sounds familiar. We've had an Oklahoma teacher on saying, well, they haven't had a raise in 10 years. I mean, it really becomes a culture, doesn't it, if there's not these constant advocates out there to fight for public education. What do you make of it?
No, I think that's exactly right, Ed. And look, the fact of the matter is you hear a lot of people bashing the teachers' unions, the National Education Association and the American Federation of Teachers. But the reality is that where those unions are strong and where they're able to advocate effectively, you maintain a decent level of support for teachers, and quality teachers want to work in those places. Where the unions are weakened by right-to-work laws, by assaults on public employees, by a general disregard of organizations that represent workers, you end up in a situation where slowly and surely you chip away at the pay and benefits, and you end up in a situation like they have in Oklahoma, where I saw a teacher interview the other day where he said, look, he's been a teacher, he loves teaching, but his daughter is now studying to become a teacher. And he said, the one thing I tell her is don't start your career in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Because you're never going to get to a level of pay you need.
John, let's talk about the president and what he has been doing as of late, really attacking a business, Amazon, not only them, but the model and who they own, which is the Washington Post. It's really unprecedented. And then he ropes in the post office, seeming to be almost an advocate for the post office. And of course, they've got their economic challenges because of legislation that was passed back in 2006. How do you see this unfolding? The president's action, Amazon, and also the post office. There's a lot of stories tied together here.
There's a lot going on here, and at the heart of it is the president's penchant for bashing the press and bashing anybody that he doesn't get along with, and that certainly is a part of the Post component of that. But I would really caution here. I think there's a lot of debate that we should have about Amazon. They are coming more and more into communities across this country, into retail in all sorts of ways, and there's a real debate for America to have. But generally, when I talk to people who are in the postal unions, in the Postal Service, they like the fact that Amazon is using the post office as a vehicle to deliver things. They don't want Amazon to set up its own privatized delivery service or to go through, one of the non-postal service operations. And so I don't like what the president's doing. I think the president could have a much more positive approach. If he wants to get a better deal for the Postal Service, great. but simply attacking Amazon and not recognizing that Amazon's doing what I want companies to do. I want companies to use our U.S. Postal Service.
What do you make of Mitch McConnell saying that the midterms are going to be a Category 3, 4, or 5 for the GOP? Quick thought on that.
I live in Wisconsin, Ed. On Tuesday, for the first time in 23 years, a progressive got elected in an open race for the state Supreme Court, and Scott Walker lost most of the races he was angling to influence. And so I would say something's happening out there in America. It looks like a lot of these Republicans who had a really easy ride for a long time are having a much harder time.
John Nichols, Washington correspondent of The Nation. Thank you, John. Good to see you. Good to have you with us.